Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do some router work on this eagle crest symbol here. Now I do apologise for the colours. When we finally do our colours, it'll be the red, white and blue. The ink on my printer has just about died to death, and you can see from that. But it's we only want the outlines, remember, to make our template. So we've printed it off, and it's basically 23 inches by 19 inches, and we're going to do it on 12mm hardwood plywood. I did want to put this on some pine, but I just haven't got a piece big enough, so we're going to do it on our plywood here. And the idea is to route out all these coloured sections, so we've got plenty to go out. We'll leave the stars where they are, and we'll actually route out around those, so the only thing left will be the stars and obviously all the line work. Everything else will be routed out. So it's a good little project on our hands today. Now some people, they will glue that template straight to the wood, the plywood, and just route out over the paper. I tried it once, it's just too messy for me. There is other methods regarding acetones and printing it in reverse and tipping it over and using a spoon on the back with putting your acetone on and stuff like that. But for me personally, good old carbon paper underneath. A nice fresh piece. Not this one. This one has appeared on all my videos. There's no carbon whatsoever. But basically you get a nice fresh piece of carbon, pop it underneath. If you want to, you can do 6 pieces in one go. And draw around this with a biro. That way your image is transferred on there. I just pull that off quickly. There we go. So there's our image all nicely on there. Plus you can obviously use that one over and over again should you want to. I tend to keep all my projects because you never know further down the line if you fancy doing one again. But personally, all my little projects are basically just the ones for me is plenty. And if you can see from that, we've got it all sorted. Take 5 minutes to shade in the areas you want to remove, because you'll go away, come back, and you might just start rooting out this section here. Well, that's the end of your project. So take your time. If you want to put crosses on or whatever, just make sure you're shading the areas you want to remove. It's easily done. And this section here I've done with the blue biro. That will be cut out with a scroll saw, and a little section there, and then we'll cut out the full piece on a scroll saw. We'll talk about that nearer the time. Now for all, excuse me, just a little bit out of breath today. I've been rushing around. As always for me, little CNC bits. These are great little bits. There is better bits out there, I'm assuming. I've never used them personally, but when I've watched other videos with the experts, as we call them, they like to use profile bits, liner bits and stuff. But for me, for somebody just starting out, little CNC bits like that, eBay or Amazon, they do have a small shaft on them, a 3.175mm. So if your router takes 1/4 inch shafts, shanks, or whatever you call them, you require what they call an adapter collet. And it's just basically a tube with a couple of splits down it, and you pop your CNC bit into there, and that will now fit your router, no problem. If you are using a Dremel with the router attachment, they will fit your Dremel, no problem. So we will pop that in there. I believe that's a 15 degree, that one. That's just that angle of that cut on the end. We'll use this to go around all our lines. Remember, as always, you want to cut up to the line. Don't do on the line itself. You've got some tighter bits together. You do a line there and a line there, then you've altered that little section in between. So up to the line that way, same on that way. So we'll do all the line work on this, around all these stars. These will be good, interesting long curves to do all those. But once you get in the zone, you'll soon get used to it. And then once we've done that, we'll remove the CNC bit, pop on one of these end milling bits. There again, there is other bits out there, spiral up cups I believe, are favourites for people. But we can get one of these, nice smaller one. These are ideal for cleaning out with. To show you there. And they have the same size shaft on, so they will literally just fit your same adapter collet, like so. And we will pop that in the router, set it to the same depth, and basically remove all our penciled in shaded areas. On my older pieces, I'm sure you can still get these ones. They come with those little barriers on, and they're ideal because that's when you just push that into your adapter up to that barrier and you're good to go. And we will need smaller ones like this, I suppose, because we've got to get into these pointed areas here. But that's when we come for the clear out. Before that, we obviously got to do all our line work, so we pop our CNC bit back into our adapter down here somewhere. Now I work on about 3mm. That is literally the thickness of that, 3.175mm. That's deep enough for the resin we're going to use. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we are going to put coloured resin into all these routed out areas, and 3mm is plenty. I made myself a little adapter, depth gauge should I say. You can purchase proper gauges off eBay and stuff, but two different settings here, and I know I want that one there. That is just the same thickness as that, so we can put our router on top of here with the bit in, set it to that. Or I normally just take a couple of samples out of this waste material to a finer depth that I'm comfortable with. So we'll do that first, set it up, and then start doing all our line work. Right, so we're all ready to route out the lines on this one. We've got our CNC bit there, you can just see, just set up in the router in our adapter collet. And it's roughly maybe 3mm. I've just done a couple of sample pieces down here, if I can just show you quickly. If I can move that over, there we go. You can just see them down there. So 2 or 3 samples, and I'm going to go with that one there. You don't want to go too deep because basically you're just wasting resin. But anything around the 3mm, or like I say, the depth of the same thickness of the CNC bit is more than plenty. So we've got our depth. Let's start doing all our lines. Right, you might just be able to see from that, we've gone all around the lines with that CNC bit. If I can just hold it up, it's hard to tell, to be honest. These projects are just a little bit too big for me, but we can assure you we've done all those lines. And if you get really close, you should be able to see the pencil line still. Remember, we route out up to the line all the way around. This is just the nature of the wood. Some of your plywoods are really nice. I've had some that have just been really good. Some I've routed out these sections and we found little voids underneath. Remember, your plywood's made of layers. There's actually 7 on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 layers. So they obviously put the nice stuff to the top, and the I'm not going to say rubbish stuff, but the maybe not so nice gets squashed in the middle. So we might find as we're routing out these odd pizzas, we'll have something underneath that's maybe not as nice as the top. That doesn't affect me because we are going to inlay all this with resin. But just remember, if you are going to paint inside these, you might have some nasties underneath to think of. So resin for me when it comes to plywood. Right, so we've removed the CNC bit. That made no that had no problem routing this out at all. And And we're going to pop in one of these little end milling bits. Like I said previously, you've got the same shaft, so they literally just slot in there. We'll pop that into the router, and you'll notice on some of mine, I just removed certain areas, like down there. That's our little depth gauge. So we'll pop it in the router, we can set it at gauge, and basically start removing all these sections. Might pay you just to go around and pencil off what we want to remove. I would hate to come in now and remove one of those stars, so we want to go around the stars and then we'll see what they look like, and all that wants removed. So we've got plenty to go at. Right, let's remove the rest of this. Right, we've made it all the way round with that little end milling bit. It doesn't look a lot to look at, but it takes it out really nice. The good thing about these, they do route out the side sections as well as the bottom, so it's quite as smooth as the bottom of that. If I just lift it up without knocking anything, it's not really too bad. Remember, we are going to cover all this with resin, so it doesn't have to be overly fantastic. The top section is going to be more important. So now we're going to cut it out on a scroll saw. We have one cut there, inner cut. We'll drill a pilot hole for that, just so we can pop the blade in there and literally cut that out. And there's another one there on the side. I can try again without knocking the camera. There is a smaller one. Where does it go? Just there. I think when we cut the head out, we can just come in down the side of that, cut that out, and then go back up and finish the rest of the wing on. So we'll just go for the one pilot hole there, and the rest we just cut it out. If scroll saw is not your thing, you could leave it like that, put a nice frame on it, and then put all your paints, all your resins in. Remember, if you're using paints to fill all this in, you will have to sand afterwards, and with your plywoods, because it is on layers, you will be tempted to take away the top layer of plywood, which goes more like a yellow. So unfortunately with plywoods, you can't get away with too much sanding. Right, and I also just remembered there, I did mention about the voids and stuff. We've been quite lucky with this one. We've got one little brown mark there, look, which is absolutely doesn't mean anything. And there was two little sections. I can just spin it around again. There was two sections there. There's one there, and there's actually one up there. But we got lucky, they're still full. I have been known to route out these, and there can actually be an hole in there. So obviously you've got to fill it in before your resin or paint goes in. So cutting out time. We will cut it out on a scroll saw, obviously. For me personally, I like to use what they call spiral blades. With spiral blades, the teeth spiral the full length of the blade, and they will cut in any direction. So we can basically start there and just cut this out like so. Ideal for your larger projects. The other blade is a standard pinned one. They come on your more cheaper saws. And remember, with your blades, they want to feel smooth on the way down, rough on the way up, be them straight blades or spiraled. And you also get a pinless blade. They're more professionals use those. Very, very delicate. And in those three blades, we'll cut these out. unfortunately with my old draper in the corner, it only takes pin blades, spirals or pinless, so I have to use these adapter clamps. There's an Allen key there, you undo that, slide that off, slide that into your project, put the clamp back on, tighten it up, and then clip that onto your saw. So they're a bit of a player about, but they do the project, as we say. So if you were going to purchase a scroll saw, buy one that takes pinless blades and just save yourself a lot of trouble. Right, we'll set this up on the scroll saw and then basically start cutting all this out. Once we cut it all out, I like to come in with these little cheap eBay special engraving bits. We get one with a nice flat bottom. It's already on my flexi cable. And there again, just eBay special, this one. We've got a nice little bit in there, and that's going to be plenty just for us to go around. And you can angle this bit and just nibble away and get tighter into your pencil lines. And that's going to clear out all those little bits like so. But before that, we'll cut it out, and then we'll tidy it up, and a good bit of sandpaper and a mouth sander, and then we'll look into the staining, varnish and the resin side of things. Right, I just about managed to get round on this one. I don't really do projects as big as this, only because I am limited in my little workshop here, and obviously the size of the piece itself. But those spiral blades certainly made life a bit easier. I did work out roughly, and it's the first time for me. Normally, as I do into the point here, I will come in with your spiral blade, because they cut in any direction, and then you can literally just come out like that, and into the next one, and come out like that. Because it was such a point in there, it was struggling to get another nibble to come down for the second side of there, if that makes sense. So I worked out in the end, we'll come to the point, I backed up with the blade, cut across, and then come in from that side, just give you a nice point, and then continued. And we did the same more or less on every one of these. So we went into the point, reversed up, cut across, and then back into the point again. It just worked out a lot easier than trying to go in there and nibble again and come back out the opposite way. So every day's a learning day, so that was a new one for me. So we can remove all our bits, and I also found it easier just to remove these chunky sections as we went along, just so we can remove all this. That just allowed me to get further back into the saw itself. And the last two pieces there, one there and one there. So there's our piece all nicely cut out. We will want a bit of sanding on this, obviously, especially on the back section with those spiral blades. You do get what we call little fluffies here. If I can just find some, these little fluffy sections here. With a bit of sandpaper, they come off no problem. You will notice on the back of that one there, look, that was my first attempt of drawing it out, and the paper moved and these just weren't matching up at all. So we called it a day, spun it over and tape your template down proper, that way it's not going to move. So there's our overall shape done now. So now we're going to come in with our little Dremel bit, remember, on the end of the flexi cable. Nice flat bottom engraving bit. I'll use this just to go around, give it all a general tidy up, then a mouse sander. I have somewhere on the floor, I believe, and then good old sandpaper. These are quite sharp, these edges. With it being such a square cut with the router, they're quite sharp. So we want to just round all these off, get rid of all those pencil lines. Look, remember about the pencil lines, we can just about make them out still. You route up to the pencil line. I keep repeating myself, but that's quite important. You've got thinner sections. You imagine around that beak there, look. If you're going to route out on the line and on the line, that middle section would be a lot smaller, and the same around the eye, so always up to the line. Okay, we'll tidy all this up, front and back, and then when we come back, we'll look into what kind of paint or stain we're going to use, and then we'll be moving on to the resin side. And literally just the stars on this one, I've just noticed there, they will be painted white. That's the only bit of paint we will be using, and the rest will all be inlaid with resin. But before that, let's tidy it up. Right, there's all our general tidying up and sanding done. Now originally I was going to come in with the mouse sander, which I normally use on most of my projects, but it could be a little bit aggressive, and the last thing I wanted was for one of those stars to lose one of the points. So we just went with the Dremel for the inside of all this, just to tidy it up, and good old sandpaper, and that's just took the edge off there just nicely. And we also removed all those little fuzzy sections from the back. They're all nice and clear, and obviously we've just done exactly the same on the front section. Make a nice little shape of it, a little tube thing like that, and you can soon run along each one like so, and just rounding off those edges, and that's it. That's enough sanding down for me. Now the next stage, they only need the white paint on this one, just painter's touch paints, even acrylic paint will do. So I'm going to go with painter's touch just to paint these stars here. I'm going to keep them white. I could have gone with yellow, but I'm going to go with white. And I want to get these side walls done a little bit, so I might end up masking this off or just take my time, because when we put the resin in, we won't be going right to the top, not far off, but I don't want any bare wood showing. So once some stars are done, that will be the hardest bit over, because the rest of it, originally I was going to paint it all black or spray it all black. I prefer to paint on my projects dark teak. You know it's coming. This goes on really nice, and we will just literally cover the full piece or the side walls as well. And once that's nicely dry, we'll come in with some varnish, just give it a nice shine, and to help seal any of this plywood just before the resin goes in. So before that, bit of paint, bit of stain. Right, there's all our paint on and the dark teak stain, and I managed to paint the side walls of all those stars. That was probably the slowest bit, and it won't do us any just darkening the back sections. That just helps if your resin colour is maybe not as thick, because you have a dark background. I don't know what that was then. It just helps the colour look a bit darker. So the stars are all nicely done, all the teak's done, it's all nice and dry. With plywood, you never get your sides as good as, and I'm tempted to go around and paint these all black afterwards. But for now, we'll just leave it, and hopefully when we put our varnish on, we know it's coming next. That will just darken this all down nicely. Now, 2 reasons for the varnish. For those that's watched my previous video, I do like a nice shine on my projects. For me, it just finishes them off nicely. Not on all of them, of course. And 2, it might just seal this plywood a bit, just reduces those air bubbles in the resin. Personally, I think you manage without it, but it won't do us any harm. Basically just to spray the full piece It's a glorious day today. We'll start off in here, then we'll go outside, get all those side sections done. But for now, we can just spray like so, and that will just give us a nice, hopefully, better finish than just the plywood on its own. Right, we'll take this outside, do all the side works, and then when we come back, we'll be ready to put the resin in. Right, it's resin time. Now this all looks a bit complicated at the moment. Basically all I've done, because there's alternate colours going in, I have been known to fill the wrong one by mistake. So I have these little resin pellets that I've made from previous projects, and all I've done is just drop one of those in there, just to remind me what colours go into each section. And we're going to do all the white first. We can remove all the white pieces, and that will just allow us to fill all those in without any mistakes. You'll see as it all comes together. So resin for today, Vista 1 resin. All your resins are two parts. You have A, your resin, B, your hardener. Let me just swap those around. You have A, your resin, B, your hardener. This is a mix by volume, and it's what they call a 1-to-1 mix. So however much of A, you need the same amount of B, and you basically just mix them two together. Some resins are 2-to-1, some are 3-to-1. Some resins are deep pour resins, some are craft resins. So just make sure you get the right resin. I use the little plastic party cups. You get 100 for next to nothing. They are nice because they have little grooves on the side. So I'll count up 6 grooves on this one for A, and obviously 6 grooves for B. Then mix the two together. They do say transfer A and B into a third container. It's something I've never done, and I've never had any issues. So we'll mix that resin up nicely off camera. I'd rather mix small sections, should I say small bits, than do a big cupful and have it going off with the weather. Mixing wise, just nice plastic knife and forks. They have a nice little groove in the bottom there, so you can literally do your mixing, and we'll scoop that out, and that will help us feed in each section as we go along. There is syringes out there. I've tried that, didn't quite work. And these little plastic pipettes, it's possible to suck the resin up, and maybe you could put it in that way. More trouble than what it was worth, so I don't bother. So little plastic knife, forks and spoons are ideal for me. For the colour wise, you get powders, inks, dyes. I just use nice cheap acrylic paints. They recommend 10% for the amount of resin mixing. I basically just put in to have a good solid colour, and I've never had any issues. And then once it's nicely into the little sections, we skim over the top with a lighter, and that just helps all those little air bubbles come to the top. So right, we'll mix our resin first, and then start filling this one in and see how far we get. Right, there's all our first batch nicely mixed up. So it's just a case of popping a white in. So I've removed all the little white markers for now. Once the white's gone in, we can remove all the red ones and basically fill it in without any mistakes, hopefully. Now the paint itself, just like I say, acrylic paints. We'll just pop a bit in there. It's just a case of trial and error. So I might put a bit too much in there, but I'm sure when it mixes around, we will be good to go. And I like to just drop a little bit in, see how white it is. If it's not right, we just simply add a little bit more. Remember, with your resins, you want proper gloves on, please. Nice mask, plenty of ventilations. Don't follow me by example. I will just pop a little bit more in there just to make sure we've got it nice and white. Right, hopefully that should be near enough for what we want today. Remember, we can use the back of that spoon just to see what it looks like. Yeah, a little cocktail stick just to help it along its way. And I'm still going to go for a little bit more in there, so I'll add a bit more white, and then basically we can just start filling this one up. Right, there's our last bit gone in, and we've managed it all. As each piece of resin, each colour's gone in, we've gone across it. I like to just skim across like that. You won't see it so much on camera, but all those bubbles will disappear. If I can just get it in just to show you, we've done it all. Everything's nice and covered. I'll just spin it round quickly, he says, hopefully, just to show you that side and all. So everything is nicely covered. So we'll leave this for a good 24 hours. Get a nice cover for it. Cover the thing completely. We've obviously had the doors open today, and there's been the odd fly flying around. But dust, hairs or anything, they will find it. So we'll cover it over, come back in 24 hours. Right, that's it. This little project is finished. Now it's less than 24 hours later. Personally, I would leave this for a couple of more days. In some resin groups, manufacturers recommend 30 days to fully cure. I think that's a little bit over the top, but I'm not a resin manufacturer. But you can see from that, everything's nice and solid, and everything's gone okay. Colours have come out really nice, as you can see from that. On the back section, just cover up that disaster of carbon tracing. We'll literally paint it black, and I will hang a hanger in there of some description for hanging purposes. But as far as this project goes, we are finished, and we've had no issues with that resin mixed with the acrylic paint. So that's it. This little project is finished. So we routed it out on 12mm plywood. We used our little CNC bits to do all our line works with. Remember, there is different bits out there, profile bits, liner bits, and for the clear out, little end milling bits. If you're just starting in this hobby of wood and routing out and stuff, those two little bags there, little packets of your bits, that will be all you need to get you going. Simple eBay or Amazon. Don't forget your adapter collet, that's actually in the router at the moment. And then we cut it all out. I use a Pegas number 5 spiral blade. Any blade would do this project, no problem. Unfortunately mine, I do have to use these adapter clamps because it only takes pin blades. So bear that in mind if you're wanting to get a scroll saw. Definitely get one that would take pinless blades. Once we had it all cut out nicely, we came in with a dark teak to do all the dark sections. I went over that about 2 to 3 times at least. And then before the resin went in, we sprayed it with a 151 varnish. Like I say, just to give it a nice shine, and maybe it'll help seal it. Personally, I don't think it needs it. But you can see for that, the wood sections here, look, we've just got enough to get a shine on it. And then we came in with the Vista One resin. That's just a favourite of mine. I have used 3 or 4 different resins in the past, and they all basically do the same thing. And for me, just cheap Crawford and Black acrylic paints gives you a good solid colour. And that's it. We are finished. So it's a eagle crest symbol, obviously connected with the American side of things there, routed out on hardwood plywood 12mm and inlaid with resin mixed with acrylic paints. And it measures in, if I remember rightly, 23 inches by 19, something like that. Okay, thank you very much for watching.